Hi, everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. It's the middle of the week, so congratulations, everybody. You made it to halfway through the week after 4th of July weekend. I hope everyone had a great, fun, and safe 4th of July. I know I had a fun weekend, even though here where I live, the weather was kind of bad. It rained pretty much all of Saturday and a little bit of Sunday, but we made the most of it, and it was fun. And so I hope everybody else had a good weekend too. But we have some baseball to talk about, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope everyone else is too. And speaking of baseball talk, I am pleased to introduce my guest with me that I have today, who ironically is wearing a 4th of July related shirt, as I mentioned, 4th of July weekend. So that's awesome. He's a good friend of mine. He has a great podcast himself, and we enjoy going back and forth on different sports. Sean Tedford, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I know I was a guest on your show a couple times, and we had fun. It was good conversation. So before we kind of dive into some of the baseball talk, could you just give us a little bit of a sense of what your show is about and how you started it and how long it's been going on for?
Sure. So, yeah, I have my own podcast called the Champ Podcast. I've been doing this for a little over a year now. What I basically talk about, like Gabby mentioned, I like talk about baseball, but I also talk about like other sports too. Like I said, I've done this for over a year. You can follow me on Instagram at the Champ Podcast, Twitter at the Champ Pod, Facebook at the Champ Podcast, and I also have a TikTok, the Champ Podcast as well.
Nice. Yeah. TikTok is a very interesting platform. I know I've been using it more and more to post videos from my show too. It's definitely a different animal than Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, everyone should definitely check him out and his content. He's definitely really knowledgeable about a lot of different sports, and we definitely don't like all of the same teams, but we do have one common team, that is the Red Sox. I do not think I know who your football team is, though.
Washington.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might have posted something about that during football season. I remember us talking about that, but good choice. They might be pretty good this year.
Oh, top 10 defense, yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting, but you are a Red Sox fan because you are smart when it comes to baseball and picking teams. So, I mean, we're really close to the All-Star break at this point, and the Red Sox are still leading the AL East, and that's very exciting. Kind of a disappointing loss last night against the Angels. I'm not sure how much of it you watched, but there was a lot of unluckiness going on in terms of the Red Sox. It's not like they weren't hitting, because they were hitting, and then they would just get hit directly to somebody, or they would just, it was just the worst possible luck, like where the ball was landing when the Red Sox were hitting. So that was pretty frustrating for me to see.
Yeah, Ohtani definitely killed us, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's very good. I mean, I wasn't sure how he was going to do, because his last start against the Yankees was terrible. He gave up 7 runs in the first inning. Of course, the Angels came back and won that game in extra innings, which was pretty funny. But maybe it wasn't. Yeah, no, it wasn't in extra innings. It was just that it was the game got delayed because of the rain that night, so then it didn't pick up until like 11:30. So it felt like it was in extra innings. But yeah, so that I wasn't sure how he was going to do, but he was excellent. I mean, I have to give the guy credit. I mean, he gave up 2 runs, but he pitched really deep into the game, and that's he's good on both sides of the ball, and that's just he's a special player. But that's something for me about the Red Sox that I was kind of concerned about, that I still kind of am a little bit concerned about, is our pitchers' ability to go deep into games. Because from a lot of what I've seen this season, the pitchers will go, maybe 5 innings, 6 occasionally, but we don't have anybody right now that I can confidently say we can get 7 innings from on any day. And I think the closest to that right now is Nick Pivetta, but he walks too many people, so then he gets his pitch count up too high. So then he ends up having to leave relatively early in the game anyway.
Right. Exactly. Like I just hope Chris Sale comes back, because I've been seeing his like performance lately, like practice and stuff. Oh man, it's like with the way he's been pitching, I think Chris Sale is going to be back to his normal self before the Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, and obviously it's hard to know for sure, because with Tommy John surgery, you don't know how a pitcher is going to come back after the fact. But with him, I mean, Alex Cora said he's been looking really, really good. And I've heard a lot of times pitchers come back actually better than they were from Tommy John. And if we get that Chris Sale, like you said, then he could be that number one guy. And I don't know that right away he will be. I know there's been some talks about him pitching out of the bullpen at first so that he can get back quicker. And I wouldn't really be opposed to that idea, although the bullpen has been pretty good overall. I wouldn't mind him leading back into it by being a bullpen piece, and then just get rid of Matt Andrews altogether, because he's just I can't really deal with him anymore. The only time I can deal with him in a game is if they have like a 6-run lead at least, because you know that he's probably going to give up at least a couple runs, but you can't put him in a high leverage situation, and that's been glaringly obvious all season.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of difficult to, like, with Andrews. Like Andrews is like you said, Andrews is not that good. It's like,
yeah, he's not.
He's like, not. Yeah.
And I think back to what you said about Chris Sale, I think if he comes back and he can be fully healthy and we can rely on him, that's going to be a huge addition to the rotation, because you'll have Sale, Pivetta, Eovaldi, Erod, and then probably Garrett Richards because of what he's being paid. And then Perez would probably be the guy that gets X'd out of the rotation once Chris Sale comes back, which, I mean, for good reason. I mean, he's had his struggles this season and he's been inconsistent, and inconsistency is a big thing for me. Eovaldi did not have it last night against the Angels, but he'll have starts where he's really, really good. And so I still think the pitching is of concern. And I mean, that's also something I wanted to ask you. But I mean, I think the pitching overall, if they can be consistent, would be really good. And I think, they need to address first base at the trade deadline. I think that's a position that's still a glaring need with the team. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on that, and what you think should be like a priority at the trade deadline.
I agree with you. First base is definitely what we need. Devers is really good, but like you saw at the beginning of the series, season, he's been messing up plays and stuff. So, I mean, a solid backup for third baseman is also what we need. We're definitely set with outfield, because with Verdugo, and Verdugo's been doing very well for us lately, so that's good. And whenever JD Martinez is on outfield, he definitely helped us too.
JD was somebody I worried about in the outfield too, because he really is not that great defensively in the outfield. He's just much better off as a DH. But Hunter Renfro has an absolute cannon of an arm. I mean, that guy, I think people are starting to learn not to run on Hunter Renfro. I mean, he had that great throw recently in the last series that they played against the A's. He had a really, really nice throw to home in one of those games. I don't remember which game it was. It was either that first or second game. And
it was a game that went to like 10th inning.
Yeah, it was the game that went to extras. That's right. I think that was – I don't remember if that was the first or second game of the series.
I think it was the first.
Yeah, I think it was the first too. That was the one that he gunned somebody down at home. And Kike, too, had a really good throw in that series as well to home. That ended up really – I think that Kike's really helped the Red Sox in that game too. And Kiki Hernandez, when they signed him – I thought that I kind of thought it was a bit of an underrated signing among the fans, because nobody was really talking about it. And fans of other teams were like, oh, well, that doesn't worry me. That doesn't really make the Red Sox that much better. But talking to Dodgers fans, they all adored Kike. They adored his personality and just him in the locker room and what he brought to their team. And they liked that he could do everything. And that's what I like about Kike, is that he can pretty much play any position. So if somebody's injured, you can have him step into their position unless it's pitching. That'd be interesting to see him pitch. I'd be curious if he'd be good at that too. But he's like a more, what I usually like to say about him is that he's kind of a younger version of Brock Holt, because Brock Holt could do everything too. He's just older now. And I think having a younger version of him, which is what Kike's role has primarily been, I think is important. And we've seen Marwin Gonzalez kind of move around too, because he's played in the infield and the outfield also. But Kike, I mean, he's starting to really find his stride here, I think. And recently on this show, I said, you know, the whole leadoff hitter situation needs to be figured out, because we were having Arroyo was doing it, which I actually liked. Danny Santana was doing it for a bit, so I'm glad that that's not happening anymore. And Kike, who was doing it at the beginning of the season and was relatively struggling, but now in this last week, it really seems like Kike is finding his stride as a leadoff hitter. And I don't know what changed that, but it seems like ever since he hit that leadoff home run against Garrett Cole and the Yankees, everything's kind of gone uphill for him in the leadoff spot. And if he can really be a reliable leadoff hitter, then this is going to be a hard team to beat. And it already is a hard team to beat because of the offense. But if he can really solidify himself as the leadoff hitter, I think that's the only real question mark with the offense, because I think we haven't really seen a consistent, reliable leadoff hitter. And if Kike can really step into that role, then this offense is in very, very good shape.
Right. Oh, back to the pitching.
Yeah, the pitching.
Yeah, let's go.
Because that's still, who knows how that's going to pan out. But
you know what they should do? We've been saying this multiple times. Tanner Houck. They should just like get him like as the starting rotation and just have him do that.
It's funny that you say that, because I literally the other day, I think, was having this conversation with someone, and I said, I wonder what the plan is for Tanner Houck, and if he's going to be somebody that we see come out of the rotation maybe after the All-Star break. And when Chris Sale comes back, I think, and this is something that I've been hoping I've been able to say for a while about this Red Sox team, is that they have options now, which is a beautiful thing, because they did not really have options, especially from a pitching standpoint, until this season for a while, because they did not have a lot of depth in the farm system or just on the team in general, because there were just not a lot of reliable bullpen pieces, and there was no farm system really. So now that Chaim Bloom has made some moves to work to rebuild the farm system, it's nice that they have options. And I think if Tanner Houck comes up, there's a lot you can do with him. You can throw him into the bullpen and have him be a solid bullpen piece and just take out some of the weaker links, or you can put him in the starting rotation. Could you imagine that starting rotation? It'd be like Sale, Houck, Pivetta, Evaldi, and Erod probably would be the five.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Erod would be the 5 starter, because he's been struggling this year overall. He hasn't been bad. He's actually been better than I think people would think he's been, but for him and what we've seen from him in the past, he hasn't really been as reliable. But those 3 between Sale, Houck, and Pivetta, that would be a serious group of 1 through 3 starters.
I think it's probably much better than Sale, Price, and whoever the third person was that year.
Evaldi. Well,
Evaldi,
yeah, I know. Well, David Price, I could talk a lot about him. When we made that trade with the Dodgers and we got rid of Mookie, obviously everybody was in shambles because it's Mookie Betts and you're probably not going to find that type of talent again. But on the contrary, on the other side of that, I do not miss David Price's contract, really. I mean, like, we had to relieve some of that money so that we could go out and make other moves, and so I think from that perspective, the David Price side of the deal, we actually benefited a lot from that, because the Red Sox would not be able to rebuild their farm system had they still had Mookie and David Price on this team, because they wouldn't have as much money to be able to go out and get other assets. And I actually think a lot of people disagree with me when I say this, but I think at the end of the day, the Mookie trade is what needed to happen, because it sets the Red Sox up much better for the future, not having him here anymore. And obviously we love Mookie, but you wouldn't be able to have players like Alex Verdugo or like Conor Wong, who's also another one I want to touch on in a minute, but other people that haven't even come up yet, like Casas and Downs and players like that are in your farm system waiting to come up, that the Red Sox can be set up to be contenders for the next few years and beyond, because they have this young talent now. Whereas if they still had the team how it was constructed, I mean, in 2019, they still had Mookie and they didn't have a fantastic season then. And so if we still had Mookie, I feel like it was one of those decisions where, like, do you want to keep this guy who probably is the best talent you have on the team? Or do you want to focus on the future of your franchise and make a tough decision like that? And ultimately, at the end of the day, this team is better set up for success for the future, I think, because if they still had Mookie, they would still have no farm system. So would they really be able to win? You know what I mean?
Yeah, same with Benintendi with Kansas City. It's like last year, his stats went down. So ever since the Royals trade, we've been improving left and right, especially in the outfield with like Verdugo and yeah.
Yeah, and Benintendi, I mean, I loved him during the 2018 season when they had the World Series run. He was very, very good, very solid hitter that year. Mm-hmm. But then slowly after that, he was kind of starting to regress. And we saw that a lot, I think, last year. And so I wasn't super upset when they traded him. I was like, yeah, I mean, we love his outfield defense, and the fact that you have a team that doesn't have Jackie Bradley Jr. or Andrew Benintendi or Mookie Betts on it, which were obviously three of the best outfielders in the league at the time. That obviously is a little discouraging, I think, for fans. But then Hunter Renfro, I think, has more than made up for his share in the outfield. And hitting-wise, he's been good too. I mean, like, he's contributed. He hit a home run last night. I mean, it was a little too late because it was already in the 9th inning and they were going to lose the game anyway. But it's nice to see him hitting.
Better late than never.
Yeah, seriously. And he's been I have so much I can say about Hunter Renfro. I mean, that guy, I had a feeling he was going to thrive here, but he's been very good. And I mean, I'm pretty sure you probably saw me before the season when I said that I think the Red Sox will surprise people and be good in 2021. Mm-hmm. And obviously so far, I mean, when I said they'd be good in 2021, I did not mean this good. I did not expect on whatever today is, July 7th, for them to be leading the AL East by a good amount of games too. I'm pretty sure they're still about 4.5 games or so ahead of Tampa Bay. Yeah. And even with the loss last night. And so I think that's, to me, is surprising. But when I said good, I meant a team that would be good enough to compete for a wild card spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, I was shocked that we're in first place. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, we're quote-unquote rebuilding. But like we mentioned before in my podcast, like, the comparison was like the Atlanta Braves, like with the young core and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a good comparison actually, because the Braves were kind of in rebuilding mode too with their young players. But then, I mean, granted they're struggling this season, but they have had a lot of injuries, so I can't really judge how their season's gone because they've just been plagued with injuries this year. Mm-hmm. But even last year, I mean, they almost went to the World Series last year when everybody thought that they were kind of really over the last couple years in rebuilding mode. But you're right with the young core, because they have that young core now, so they're going to be really good for a while. The Braves are going to be a team, especially for the National League in particular, to look out for, because now they've established that they have that young talent that they can carry with them for years to come now. And I think the Red Sox are in a similar situation where once they start bringing up some of these guys that are in the farm system right now, they're going to have a similar young core type of thing. And I mean, Xander Bogaerts, who knows if he's going to opt out or not. That would be sad if he does, but he has that option. And so, I mean, I love Xander. He's my favorite current player on the team. And I think he's a very underrated shortstop.
That's the other thing we need for like the trade deadline is another shortstop, because we don't, like you said, we don't know what the future hold for Bogaerts. So might as well just bring in a solid shortstop. I
think I saw something, and this actually doesn't surprise me, that Chaim Bloom at the trade deadline is not going to make a lot of major moves where he'd have to give up a lot of the young assets he has. And that doesn't surprise me because he worked so hard to start rebuilding this farm system that I was like, I really don't see him making a ton of moves at the deadline because he's not going to want to give up a lot of that. So I think if he does acquire somebody, it's not going to be like a huge name, like one of the biggest names on the trade market now, but it could be somebody that could just be an addition to really almost solidify what they're doing this season. But I agree with that move because I don't want to give up a lot of the young talent they have when right now this season they're already performing pretty well. So I think for me, it'll be interesting. He might not do anything at the trade deadline. He might say, look, we have Chris Sale coming back and we could bring Tanner Houck up. We don't really need anything else at the deadline, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the first base thing and also with the third base situation because Devers defensively is not the best. I mean, he's improved. I think he's improved since the beginning of this season, and he's made some good plays out there, but he still makes some bad errors at third base. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's frustrating. And obviously he's a great hitter. I love Devers. I mean, he's really good and he's clutch. But defensively, he still makes some tough errors at third base, and that's something to look out for. I think the defense in general is honestly something that still scares me a little bit because there have been a good amount of fielding errors. And I think that needs to be something that's looked at and examined. But at the same time, the outfield defense has been phenomenal lately. And I think they have like 23 defensive runs saved in over 86 games, I think was the stat I saw. And that's only 86 games into the season. So that's crazy to think about. But now that we're more than halfway through the season, I am pretty confident that this team will get a playoff spot because, I mean, maybe they win the division. Maybe they don't. If they go in a slump, maybe Tampa Bay somehow catches up and wins the division. But after the All-Star break, which we'll talk about soon, they play the Yankees, Rays, Blue Jays, and then the Yankees again, I think. So that stretch is going to be very, very important because if they can win most of the games in that span, then I'll feel really, really good about what they're doing. And I'll feel really good about their division place because you need to win those division matchups. I said that at the beginning of the season. I said this division is going to come down to who gets it done when you're playing the other teams in the division. And the Red Sox overall have played the division really well this year. I mean, 6-0 against the Yankees. I mean, swept the Rays and then dropped 2 of 3 against the Rays recently, but then more than made up for it by sweeping the Yankees again. The Blue Jays have been the team they've struggled against the most in the division this season. So I think that stretch, because it's, 3 against Philly this weekend, then it's the All-Star break. And they were fine against Philly last time on the road. They took 2 of 3. So hopefully, ideally sweeping Philly would be nice, but at least just taking 2 of 3, feeling good going into the All-Star break. And then they go to Yankee Stadium right after the All-Star break for 4 games. So that's going to be really important. And the Yankees, I mean, the Yankees don't scare me. The Red Sox are just very clearly a better team than the Yankees this year. Mm-hmm. But you do still need to win those division games so that you don't allow Tampa to gain ground. Because I think, I mean, as of right now, the Yankees are pretty far back in the division. I think their only playoff hope now is to try and secure a wild card spot. And even that, they're out. They're I think 4 or so games out of the second wild card spot right now.
They're like a game or 2 above 500. So
yeah. So I think for them, I don't think they can realistically win the division right now unless both the Rays and Red Sox just keep losing. games. So I think their only hope right now is to get a wild card spot, but I still feel like they're going to miss the playoffs. But then, and even one of the other big things when it comes to the Red Sox that I need to bring up is the draft, which is in a few days, because the Red Sox, I mean, did not have a good season at all last year. So they get the 4th overall pick in the draft. And it's like, this is a team that's leading their division right now and has the best record in the American League. And they get to pick 4th overall in the draft in a few days. I mean, I tweeted about that the other day, how great of a feeling that is, that people did not expect the Red Sox to be that good this year. So they were like, yeah, I mean, at least they have the 4th pick in the draft. But now it's like they are good, and they have a really good chance of winning the AL East. Plus, they're going to get one of the top prospects in the draft. And you have like 5 or so players in this draft class that are worthy of being drafted number 1. So I think whoever they end up with at 4 is going to be a really good talent. And I know those 2 pitchers are popular. The Vanderbilt kids are really popular, and people want to see one of them be drafted to the Red Sox. But if they go in the top 3, I still think the Red Sox have good options at 4 that they can get. And I think that that's really exciting too, because now you're bringing in another young stud into this farm system that is already rebuilding.
Right. Like yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me now is to just not take the foot off the gas. I mean, I'm excited to see how the draft plays out now that it's really close in a few days. Jack Leiter is a fantastic pitcher. He might go 1st overall though. And then Rocker.
Could you imagine if he dropped down to us? Oh my!
That's what people are hoping, because all the projections are different, right? Some projections are saying Leiter will go 1. Some are saying he could drop down to 4. So I'm not really banking on anything right now. I'm just going to wait and see how it plays out. But if he dropped to 4, then they definitely would take him, and that would be awesome. And that's what people are hoping for. But Rocker is also another really good pitcher too that they could snag at 4 if he's still available. But then there's a couple other really good players too that they could take. So I think they're in good shape regardless of who they draft. So I'm excited for that. And then I'm excited for the All-Star game. I love the All-Star game. I'm happy that Bogarts and Devers are both starting.
Me too.
I think this is like the first time, I don't remember exactly what the stat said, but about how this hasn't really happened where a third baseman and shortstop from the same team are both starting in the All-Star game, but they're both well-deserving of it. I mean, they're both really good.
I just hope Devers doesn't mess it up in the All-Star game.
I know his defense is the thing that still concerns me, but I love the All-Star game. Would you say you like the All-Star game or the Home Run Derby better?
Probably the All-Star game a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The All-Star game is fun. I mean, it's cool to see players from different teams come together and try to win a game, because it's just for one game you're working with players from other teams that you just aren't used to playing on the same team with. And I think that that's always a really cool thing I like about the All-Star game. I'm sad. It's always sad not having Red Sox baseball for a few days, but I do like the All-Star game. And I mean, the Home Run Derby is good too, but it's crazy how all of this is coming up now, because the Red Sox, by the time the All-Star game comes up, will have played 90 games. That's crazy. And they're literally on pace to win 100 games. That information has come out that if they keep playing like this, they will win 100 games, which is crazy.
We also have Alex Cora.
Yeah. Alex Cora is a huge part of all of this too. And I think, despite his situation and all the feelings people have about him personally, nobody can take away from or deny the fact that he's a fantastic manager, and he relates to his players and connects with them, and his players love playing for him. And I think that that's huge, because if you have that kind of respect from your players, it shows in the way that they play. And I think that a lot of other teams, that doesn't really take place. They don't really have that same kind of relationship with their manager that Alex Cora has. And I think that that's really important. And I think he's made a huge difference in their success. And last year was a bad season, and I think people put too much weight on last year's season when it came to judging the Red Sox this year. Because first of all, they had a manager that didn't really know how to manage the team. No offense to Ron Renicky, but he just wasn't really in a position to manage the team last year.
Plus, we also have a shortened season with the COVID situation. That's also a major fact from last year, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like last year's season was just different altogether. No fans at games. It was a 60-game season, so that felt like a sprint. If you go on a losing streak in a season like that, you're done. Whereas in a season like this, a regular length season, you can go on a little bit of a losing streak, like lose a few games in a row and still be in it, which is nice for the Red Sox that they have breathing room in the division. Because if they were to go on a bit of a slump and lose a few games in a row, they still have a decent lead on Tampa Bay, where they need to just hope that Tampa Bay loses some games in there. But overall, the Red Sox have not really had a huge slump that we've seen, because they'll maybe lose a couple of games in a row, but then they'll bounce back every single time. And that's really nice, because that shows that they're consistent and that they can find ways to win games. And even games that you think they're out of it, they're not. They're still very much in it. And I think about certain games and, you know, people coming up big for the Red Sox. Like in a game against the Blue Jays, I remember recently, they were down by a run in the 9th inning, and then Alex Verdugo hit like a 2-run double and put the Red Sox in the lead, and they won the game. And I was like, yeah, you can never count this team out of any game. And I think if you look at, and last year, I mean, granted, the pitching was terrible last year. It was. They had bad pitching last year. They didn't really have reliable starters, and the bullpen was an absolute mess. But they made moves this year to try to get better pitching and try to improve the pitching staff. And I said that to people. I said the pitching is not going to be what it was in 2020. Like, this is going to be a better team. And if they keep playing like this, they might win 100 games. If they don't, that's fine. I don't care about how many wins they have if they win the division and get a playoff spot. I'm just trying to avoid that wild card game, because if the Red Sox end up not winning the division and the Rays somehow catch up and win the AL East, you're looking at playing probably like the A's in the wild card game as of right now, I think, from where it stands. And they did play well against the A's in Oakland last weekend, but they've struggled against the AL West as a whole this season. And that concerns me, because if we're in a wild card 1-game playoff, I don't know how confident I'd be in seeing the Astros or the A's in that game.
Exactly. So for the World Series, do you think the Boston's going to somehow squeak it, like go in there just like a tiny bit?
I think it's possible. I definitely think it's possible. I think depending on what they do at the trade deadline, I mean, which is coming up, by the way, everybody, the trade deadline is in a couple weeks. If they acquire somebody at the trade deadline, I feel more confident in it. And I mean, you might, again, like we said, an acquisition at the trade deadline might not even need to be much of anybody if Chris Sale is coming back. So they might not. But I think what I will say is there's a chance if they win this division, I think there's a chance they could go to the World Series. I mean, they're going to have to figure out whatever they struggle with against the Astros, because luckily they're not playing the Astros anymore this regular season, but they struggled against them both times they played them. I mean, they dropped 3 of 4 against them, and they dropped 2 of 3 against them in the other series. So they just have some issues against Houston, and I think they need to figure that out, because Houston, if they win their division, that's a team that they likely could run into in the postseason. But I think that they have a chance. I mean, I don't think there's any team in the American League that is blatantly better than the Red Sox right now. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any team that I can think of. I mean, record-wise, the Red Sox are the best team in the AL right now. But I don't think there's any team that blatantly is better than them. I mean, Houston maybe, but Houston's bullpen is not that good. Houston's bullpen is their downfall. And I think the Red Sox have the offensive advantage too. I will say with starting pitching, other teams have an advantage, like the Rays and the Astros. And that's something that I think concerns me going forward, is just their ability to have good pitching and maintain the pitching throughout the postseason. I think that that's going to be a test for the Red Sox when they do face good teams. But I think there's a chance they go to the World Series based on what I've seen. I think that their offense is better than any other team that they'll face. In terms of the National League, though, that's going to be tough. I mean, if the Red Sox go to the World Series, there's a lot of teams in the NL that could be tough. I mean, San Francisco has been a surprise all season. The Dodgers are still really good. And the Padres, I'm still not sleeping on them. They're a good team, and they'd be tough to beat. So it would be really, really tough. But I'm not going to say that they definitely can't go to the World Series because I think that that would be a little bit of a ridiculous statement based on how they're playing. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I have a good feeling that when it comes to the postseason and this team's desire to win, I think they definitely have a chance of going. Do you feel that way or no?
Oh, I feel that way too. It's like, I mean, it depends on how, like we said, how we play against the teams that we're playing against. But if we're playing like what we've been playing like right now, I think we may have a chance to go in and possibly get another World Series champ.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Yankees fans are completely bothered by this, and they're also shook, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, I've seen on Twitter so many Yankees fans that just have no idea how to react to the Red Sox success because they were pretty sure going into the season that the Red Sox wouldn't be good. And now that they are, Yankees fans just don't know how to react to it. Because one of my friends put it really well the other day. Shout out to him. One of my really good friends that likes baseball. He said the other day, the Red Sox are what people thought the Yankees would be this year, and the Yankees are what people thought the Red Sox would be this year. And that's actually 100% true, I think, because the Yankees are barely over 500, like you said. They're like 1 or 2 games over 500 now. They won last night by a lot against the Mariners. But them being a game or 2 over 500, that's where everybody thought the Red Sox would be at this point, is that they would be, average, like barely over 500 maybe, or struggling to get to 500. Now you have Yankees fans who are like, we might not even make the playoffs this year, which they might not. I saw a stat that said if they keep losing games, they could be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs soon, which is crazy to think about because everybody thought the Yankees were like the American League favorite to win it all going into this season. And so it's crazy to think about the fact that they just might not, like they just might not make the playoffs at all.
Yankees fans always think that about the Red Sox. Every year they always think about that.
Yeah, that's true. Yankees fans always think the Red Sox are going to be bad every year. And I mean, Red Sox fans are different in that perspective because they're like, no, the Yankees are going to be a good team, So I think that's kind of funny, actually. I like it. I have conversations with people a lot, and I'm like, so about your theory at the beginning of the season about giving me a hard time about the Red Sox not being good. I just think overall from what I've seen, I mean, especially over the last week, and I mean, last week on my show, we were talking about, the whole leadoff hitter thing being questionable, but over this past week, from what I've seen from Kike, I really, really like that. And maybe we should just keep him in that spot because he's starting to really thrive in that spot, I think. And Christian Arroyo's been really doing really well. He's been contributing a lot before he got injured, but now he's back. And that's nice. I mean, he hit a home run the other night. And so it's nice having him back. And Conor Wong, he's going to be like the future of this team from the catching position. I mean, I like Christian Vasquez. I just think that, his time here might be coming up soon. Now that we have young talent coming in, and I mean, Kevin Plawecki's injured, and that's why we're even seeing Conor Wong right now as it is. But he's going to be a really, really good, and that's exciting for the future of this team. And another thing that I wanted to ask you about is Adam Ottavino, because he's somebody that came onto this team, and Yankees fans were like good riddance when they traded him. They wanted nothing to do with him anymore, his contract. But he overall has been pretty reliable. I mean, he still has a problem with walks. I mean, when he came into the game the other night, he started off the inning with a walk, which wasn't surprising to me because that's just what he does. So he needs to seriously cut down on walks, but overall he's been a good addition. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on him, and are you happy that the Red Sox traded for him?
Well, I'm happy that the Red Sox traded for him, honestly. Like you said, he needs to cut down on the walks, and after that, he gets into the strike zone. At the trade deadline, like people are saying, like, oh, they should trade Ottavino away. Let the Red Sox keep him because of how talented he is.
Yeah, I think when they brought him in, I kind of said to myself, this could actually be pretty good. But if the team's not that good come the trade deadline, then you can just trade him for young pieces and young talent that you can bring into your farm system. Just kind of throw the towel in and be like, okay, we don't really need to spend this money on him if we're not going to be contenders. So when they brought him in, I was like, yeah, there's a lot that they can do with him. But now that this team is actually showing that they're capable of competing with other teams and contending for a World Series, why would you give up somebody that's been an actual important asset to your bullpen? I think he's been a good bullpen piece. And I think if he can cut down on the walks, then he's going to be even scarier. And I think that having him as that bridge guy to Matt Barnes is really good to have. And I mean, Matt Barnes is just, he's wowed me all season in terms of a closing spot. I mean, every once in a while he'll make mistakes, but not often. Having somebody like him who actually technically wasn't even a real closer and is closing out games effectively, that's huge for this team, because the closing position before the season was always a question mark. And, we saw Matt Barnes come into that 1-0 game on the 4th of July against Oakland, and I was scared. I was like, this is a one-run lead is not enough against a team like the A's that has a good offense. And he came into that game and he gave up a couple base runners. And I was like, great, now I really don't think we're winning. I feel like they're going to walk this off now. But he still got out of it. And it's like he'll give you heart attacks sometimes, but he gets the job done for the most part. And I think that that's key, because the Red Sox last year did not have a reliable bullpen at all. And they were relying on the offense just putting up a bunch of runs every night, but you're not going to have that. The offense is not going to have it every single game. There's going to be games where the offense is pumping or they're facing good pitching and they just can't hit or something like that on certain nights. And so you need to be able to have pitching that can support that. And for the most part, I think they do have that, because you're not seeing the Red Sox pitching like last year and give up like 6 to 7 runs on average every game.
Yeah, I don't I don't think we're this good with pitching. I mean, I think we're good, but hold on. So yeah, ever since Craig Kimbrell was gone, we haven't been as good. But now now we're good.
Craig Kimbrell apparently is on the trading block too. I don't know if you've seen anything about that. Since the Cubs have not been playing well.
That's news to me.
This came out yesterday, I think, yesterday or the day before. There was news that came out saying that the Cubs are probably going to trade him because they're not playing well. I don't know what happened to them. They kind of just fell apart, the Cubs. And so
because they got rid of Lester.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for them. And so news came out that they might trade Craig Kimbrell, and people were like, well, what if they trade him to the Red Sox? But I don't think that we need him now that Matt Barnes has been a reliable closer. And why would you give up young talent for Craig Kimbrell, who I know is an actual closer, when you have somebody who actually has been performing in that spot? And it'd be one thing to me if Matt Barnes wasn't performing well and we needed somebody to come in and actually be a closer, but he has been performing well. So why would you just go and trade for somebody like a Craig Kimbrell that isn't really needed? So I think a lot of what they were saying was that likely he'll end up in the AL West somewhere with like the A's or the Astros, which I could see happening. But I just don't see Bloom trading for him, even though some Red Sox fans think they might bring him back.
No, I don't. I don't see Kimbrell come back to Boston. I mean, they could trade him for like cash consideration, but that's pretty much it. I mean,
yeah. And he scared me during the 2018, that entire playoff run. When he came into games, it was super scary. He almost blew multiple games in that. In against the Yankees, he almost blew a game, and he almost blew a couple games against the Astros. So that was just scary. So, I mean, I don't think they trade for him either. I'm kind of on that boat. Brandon Workman's been struggling, which has been a little bit disappointing because I was really happy when we got him back. Because I was like, wow, they traded him and Heath Hembry to get Nick Pivetta and Connor Siebold, and now they're bringing Brandon Workman back. So the only person they really lost in that trade was Heath Hembry, and Pivetta's been pitching really well. But it's just,
you imagine if Hembry comes back to Boston and have those four.
That would be funny. I know, that'd be pretty funny. I just want Workman to perform better. I mean, he came into the game last night, but it's just, I just want him to pitch better, because then it will really show that we 100% won that trade because we stole him back. And I think we won the trade regardless, even if he was still in Philly right now, because I think Pivetta was an absolute steal personally. But I mean, having him back now, like, I just want him to get back on track and just start performing well again, because we've seen what Brandon Workman can do, because he was their most reliable reliever in 2019. Because the bullpen wasn't that good in 2019, but he actually had good stuff. Like, I loved seeing Brandon Workman pitch in games. So if we can get him back on track, then you really have a deep bullpen, because you have Darwinson Hernandez, who's been pitching pretty well. Garrett Whitlock, there's only so much I can say about that kid, because he's been really good. Ottavino, we talked about. Matt Andrews, we talked about, who I don't want to see him pitch anymore because he hasn't been that good. But the point is, there's options now to come out of this bullpen, and I think that that's really important, and I think that that's a good thing to have, and it's nice to have those options. So if we can get Brandon Workman back on track, that'd be nice. And if you can't, then like you said before, there's somebody named Tanner Houck sitting down at AAA that could come in and take that spot.
And then you could trade Workman again.
Yeah, you could if you don't need him anymore. If you're just going to DFA him or something, then maybe you could just trade him. Danny Santana, I don't think will be on the team much longer either, because now that they have prospects that could come up too, I don't see Danny Santana being here for much longer. I mean, it's unfortunate. I feel bad, like, seeing him struggle here, because when they signed him, you know, I had high hopes there, but it's unfortunate that he's been struggling. So I don't think he's on the team much longer, but, you know, I think overall they're in good shape. I think this is a team that genuinely can contend, and it'll be fun to see what they do after the All-Star break. But I am excited for the draft and who they end up with at 4, because everybody's talking about it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, who would be your pick right now for the World Series? Like, what 2 teams, if you had to predict right now, would you say would be the 2 teams we see in the World Series?
I could see, well, Mets definitely not going to make the World Series, but yeah. I know that they're going to make it to the playoffs. They
don't have the offense. I mean, their pitching is good. They just don't really have an offense.
I mean, they're maybe at the trade deadline, if they get the offense, that's basically that's all they need is the offense.
I agree with you on the Mets, though. I think they win their division, but they don't go to the World Series.
Yeah. So for the World Series, to answer your question, I could see Boston, if they keep winning the game.
I like that pick.
But for the NL, I could see. Actually, I'd love to see the Red Sox Dodgers rematch.
Yeah, the Dodgers. A lot of people are saying that they think the Dodgers could go to the World Series again, and I mean, they're only a half a game behind San Francisco in their division right now, so they still could win their division. But they also, if San Francisco keeps playing like this, the Dodgers might be a wild card team, in which case it'd be harder for them to get there. But I do think that they could go to the World Series again. I mean, they have some injuries too, but not much has really changed on that team since they won the World Series last year. I mean, they only really lost a couple key players, TK being one of them. But for the most part, they have pretty much the same roster as they had when they won the World Series last year. So I think that they could do it again for sure. I think that would be a fun World Series if it was Red Sox Dodgers again. I like those picks. I mean, there's a lot of teams in the National League I don't want to rule out yet. I think I think San Francisco obviously has a chance. Even the Padres, I think we could see 3 NL West teams be playoff teams this year. It'd be crazy if Dodgers, Padres or something was the NL wild card game because they're in the same division.
Oh, that'll be amazing. That'll be crazy to watch.
I know. So I think we could see 3 teams from that division. I think the NL is still wide open, and it's hard to say right now. I agree with you on the Mets, though. I think they win the NL East, but I don't think that they have what it takes to go to the World Series. I do not think the Yankees, if they manage to sneak into the playoffs, will not go to the World Series. They're just not a good enough team this year. And, I mean, people are now wondering if they're even going to be buyers at the trade deadline, which at this point it might be in their best interest to just be sellers, because if they're not going to make the playoffs, then what's the point of being buyers at the trade deadline? So a lot of people are saying for the Yankees, they might as well just throw everything away right now and just start to rebuild, because I don't think how their roster is constructed right now cannot win a World Series. And granted, Corey Kluber is hurt and they don't have Severino, but even if they did have that, their offense has been the issue, not the pitching. They don't have enough players that can do enough offensively like the Red Sox have. And so I don't even see them making the playoffs personally. I think they missed the playoffs because I think that they're a very mediocre team right now. And I think they're like barely hanging on at the 500 mark, but I think they missed the playoffs. I think the Red Sox and Rays will be the 2 teams that come out of the AL East, and possibly Toronto if they get fully healthy, and they've already started making moves. So I think Toronto is not a sleeper team. I think they've had too many injuries this year, but I think the next couple of years they're going to be a team to watch out for. But I think the Yankees get left out. I don't see them making the playoffs. I think the Blue Jays don't even make the playoffs either, because I think there's teams in the AL West that are better. I think the only teams I see coming out of the AL East are the Red Sox and Rays.
Yeah.
And the Rays, I'd like to see the Rays be in a wild card game because I don't want to deal with them in the playoffs, really. But the Rays are a beatable team. I mean, we've beaten them. And ever since Tyler Glasnow went down, they've been struggling more, which is actually sad because he's a fantastic pitcher. But, you know, the Rays always find a way to be good, and nobody exactly understands
I just hope he doesn't have Tommy John surgery.
I know. I'm really, really hoping. You really hate to see that happen with pitchers. And, I mean, it's tough. But I think Tampa's a beatable team. Mm-hmm. I'd feel more confident having to play Tampa in the playoffs than the Astros.
Absolutely, yeah.
100%. I think that the Rays are a more beatable team than Houston right now.
Yeah. I mean, if we play against the Astros, I mean, we could probably lose one or 2 games and win out the rest because –
yeah, like nobody thought we were going to beat the Astros in 2018.
Yeah.
I think this Red Sox team just has too much fire and too much emotion and passion to win games. That's why they don't lose a lot of games. I think that they hate losing games, and they're here to prove a point and show that they're legit. And I think that they are going to continue to do that. And I think they just have a special bond that with this team that a lot of other teams don't have. Mm-hmm. But it should be fun. I mean, I'm looking forward to the All-Star game. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the draft. It's going to be a fun next couple weeks of baseball between the draft and the All-Star game, and then just who the Red Sox see right after the All-Star break, which is all division matchups for that first couple weeks. So it's going to be fun. I mean, I know you love baseball like I do, and I'm looking forward to continuing to just go back and forth on Twitter and Instagram about the Red Sox as the season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for joining me on the show. I really, really appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for tuning in and week out. I always appreciate every single one of the listeners, and you know where to find Boston Balling. Just a reminder that there is Boston Balling merchandise still available. There's shirts that come in all shapes and sizes and colors and styles.
It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling.
See? So, yeah, this is my little self-promotion here. But, yeah, so everybody just continue to tune in, and I promise I'll continue to hopefully bring good content. And everybody check out Sean. Check out his podcast, the Jam Podcast. He's done some good interviews. So it's on every social media platform. And I know I enjoyed having you on. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and everybody else, you as well.
Thanks for having me on, and have a nice day to you too.
Thank you.